I did everything right, they did everything wrong, that's how it is.
In my head.
You are so lucky that I do these videos for you. I am so knowledgeable and I am the best in this field, and you are just so lucky that I'm willing to do this for you. That's an example of narcissistic personality disorder, and particularly some black and white thinking. We're going to talk about that today. Before I get to that though, on a serious note, I just want to have like 5 seconds here to complain. I had to lunge my car into oncoming traffic to get here today because there was a red light that was broken. The weather people have been screwing up lately, and I wasn't sure of when I was going to be able to record a video. So yesterday I had to record a video indoors. It didn't work because my microphone wasn't hooked up right. So I apologize that there was no video yesterday, and I'm going to do my best to get a video out every day this week. So for those that don't know, NPD is Narcissistic Personality Disorder, and NPD involves grandiosity as a personality trait, which basically means that you see yourself as above other people, and it also includes attention seeking as a personality trait. With black and white thinking, it's not something that's just limited to NPD. Everybody does it. I'm going to talk about what black and white thinking is. Okay, so black and white thinking is just basically seeing things in black and white. They're opposites, right? And we only see them at extremes. So that's what black and white thinking is thinking in extremes, thinking that people are all good or all bad, or I'm all good or all bad, or the situation that we're in is all good or all bad, and we don't necessarily see any kind of in between. We see this kind of behavior when it comes to things like prejudice or stereotyping, or maybe you've known somebody before where they target one person and they just feel like there's something wrong with that person and they hate them and they project all their shit onto that person. That would be black and white thinking. They're painting that person in one color, in bad, and that's how they relate to that person. So to give a little bit of contrast to black and white thinking, an example of not doing black and white thinking would be having an ex that you broke up with, and you think that they did a lot of things wrong, they're not a great person, but you also can recognize that they have good qualities, that there are good things that they do, and you did have positive parts of your relationship. That would be an example of not using black and white thinking. The black and white thinking would be, I did everything right, they did everything wrong, that's how it is. Now, since narcissistic personality disorder is a personality disorder, you would see this in a patterned way. This is a patterned way that somebody thinks about these things if they have narcissistic personality disorder. Now, black and white thinking is not a criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, but we tend to see black and white thinking in personality disorders like it, so that's why we're talking about it. Now, if you want to get to some of the theory of why this is happening, when we're children, it's theorized that we all have this black and white thinking. It's just the way that our brain is forming, and so we see things in good or bad, black and white, one way or another way, and we don't see that middle ground. As we grow, as we mature, we start to develop the capacity to see the middle ground in things, to be able to hold two opposite feelings at the same time and two opposite beliefs at the same time, and to consider those things. However, with people with narcissistic personality disorder and other personality disorders, there's a possibility, again, this is all theorized, that when they experience some kind of trauma, particularly an attachment trauma with a parental figure, because a parental figure is supposed to help them go through this transition into learning how to manage the world. When they suffer from some kind of attachment trauma, they don't develop that capacity and they get stuck with this black and white thinking. And part of the reason for that may be because when you've been traumatized, you have these extremely strong emotions that come up and get triggered in you, and when you have strong emotions and they're attached to an extreme, it's very hard to see the opposite extreme at the same time because the emotions get in the way. Emotions are a particular system in your neurological system, and when they are activated, when the fear system in particular is activated, your prefrontal cortex, which is up here, your thinking brain, shuts off, and so you don't have that ability to see things as more than one. What this means for somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, we see this in the grandiosity, right? So the grandiosity is I am above you, and so that's the black and white thinking. It's I am always above you, you are always below me, and I can never be below you, and you can never be above me. Now, this is in contrast to somebody that maybe has something like borderline personality disorder, where their view of things are constantly shifting around. Somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, it's pretty steady. They pretty much always see themselves as above other people, but there is a time when we get confused about this, when we see them in love relationships, for example, or with friendships. So let's talk about that. You might think to yourself, well, if a person with narcissistic personality disorder, a person with NPD always sees themselves as above other people, how do they even relate to people? How do they have friendships? How do they have romantic relationships? And that's what we're going to talk about. Well, what typically happens with a relationship with somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder is they tend to have very superficial relationships. They don't get too deep, they don't get too involved, because to get deep and involved means they'd have to have these conflicting emotions and these conflicting feelings about people, that they have really difficult time having the capacity to do that. What usually happens with a narcissistic personality disorder person and an intimate relationship is that they pick somebody, and when they pick this person, it stays at a superficial level, but they use this person as an extension of themselves, is what they call it. And so whoever they're in this relationship with, they don't care to really get to know that person. They only care about that person as a reflection of themselves and as proof of how great they are and how wonderful they are. So they may shower that person with affection and they may hold that person up above other people, but it's only to reinforce how they are above other people. And as long as that person serves that role to prop them up, to make them seem important, to make them seem like they're better than other people, that person will stay in a relationship with them as long as that person stays in the relationship. Sometimes when we see these relationships, we kind of think of them as having people that are partners in crime, as they call it. So they are there to serve each other, to inflate each other's sense of ego, but they're not really there to relate to each other. Now that's a dynamic that cannot last forever, because invariably people are going to compliment the partner and they're going to tell the partner that they like things about them, and there's going to be people who also tell the person with narcissistic personality disorder, I don't like something about you, or they're going to show it physically through gestures, through the way that they interact with that person. And so once the person with narcissistic personality disorder starts to feel like the other person's getting too much attention, they're not reinforcing that grandiosity that they have, they're going to switch around the black and white thinking. And actually, I should have mentioned at the beginning of this video, sometimes we call this splitting. So it switches, and from that person that's with them always being the best, they turn around and now they're the worst. They are bad. And this is when we see these very quick dumpings of the other person, where they just cut them out of their life, they move on, and the person with narcissistic personality disorder typically goes on to find somebody else to replace them very quickly, because it was a superficial relationship, they weren't really that invested in the first place, and they're just looking for somebody to prop up their own ego. Now this doesn't mean that somebody that has narcissistic personality disorder can't feel any kind of remorse or ever think badly about themselves. There will be periods where it flips and they see themselves as all bad, but those are usually very short-lived. They may issue like a quick apology to like make up for it, but as soon as things feel right again, to them feel right, and things get switched around again, they're back to feeling all good, and that little bit of remorse that they had is gone very quickly, because they don't stay in that position of feeling all bad because it feels so terrible. And part of the narcissistic defense is to stay away from that feeling in the first place. In fact, one of the theories is that underneath the narcissistic defense, the narcissistic personality disorder is actually a borderline organization, or a borderline personality disorder, BPD, and that's something I'm going to talk about tomorrow. So what do you do if you're somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder? You're hearing this, you recognize some of this in yourself, and you're like, what am I supposed to do about this? Because I am the best and I don't have anything wrong with me, but I kind of see a point you're making here. Well, if that's the case, then you're going to want to see a therapist who understands trauma and who understands personality disorders, because either one of those could be very relevant to what's going on with you. They will be able to make you feel safe. They'll be able to validate you and reaffirm to you that, yes, there are a lot of good qualities about you and we should recognize those qualities, but they'll also know when is the right time and when can you handle hearing something that's slightly critical of yourself, because that's going to be the key to easing some of this up and getting this personality disorder away, because the personality disorder is hurting you. You are only having superficial relationships with people, and it's making it so that you can't function so well in life, have good jobs, have good friendships, have good intimate partnerships. So you'll want to take care of it. So they'll know how to introduce some of those critical things of yourself so that you can start to see yourself as having some flaws and not feel so emotionally, painfully charged about it when that thought comes up. Because I know when you think that, it's like the world is ending. You don't want to feel that. So they'll know how to provide a safe environment to experience that in, that you can neutralize that feeling and then start to have the capacity to see yourself in more of a gray area rather than black and white. And even though I said there may be a borderline personality going on underneath the narcissistic personality disorder, that's also very treatable. We have a lot of ways to deal with that. So I don't want you to feel like if you go in to see a therapist, it's useless, that the therapist is an idiot and they don't know what they're talking about. We have ways to deal with this, and there is is a path forward, and you don't have to keep going through these situations where you feel that intense pain, those moments when you do feel so horrible about yourself. Those don't have to exist anymore, but you got to go through this to get there. If you want to learn more about mental health, head on over to youtube.com/RyanLiberty and hit subscribe. Thank you to my patrons who make videos like this possible. If you want to support me in my mission of humanizing mental health, head on over to Patreon. I'll put that link below. Now, I'd love to hear from you, even if you don't have full-on NPD or narcissistic personality disorder, but maybe you recognize some grandiose traits in yourself. You do usually think that you're better than other people. What has helped you through this? Have you recognized this black and white issue, and how did you get through it? I want to hear from you. Leave your comments down below so we can learn from each other. As always, thank you for joining me out here. I'll see you around next time, everyone.